Hurricane Irma is now a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane, and it is one of the strongest hurricanes that's ever been recorded in record keeping in the Atlantic Basin. I'm Mike Naso from the Tropical Video Update page on YouTube with the latest on Catastrophic Irma. Now, what you see here is the 11 a.m. update, but I actually have an update from about 2 p.m. Eastern Time from the National Hurricane Center. As of 2 p.m., Irma was actually at 16.9, 59.1. So it has bumped a little bit north and gone, of course, further west. The maximum sustained winds are 185 miles per hour, gusting well into the 200s. There have only been about 4 or 5 storms with winds as high as Irma, but they have happened before. But certainly this is a record-breaking wind speed hurricane. Still moving west at 13 to 14 miles per hour. The pressure has been about 926 millibars. Now, that's not quite as low as other hurricanes with winds this high, but remember, there's a lot of high pressures in the background of this hurricane with that strong ridging to the north. The forecast as of 11 a.m., we shouldn't see too much of a change to it this afternoon. The official Hurricane Center forecast keeps Irma moving straight through the northern Leeward Islands and the U.S. Virgin Islands as a Category 5 hurricane, then just north of Puerto Rico tomorrow, and then on Thursday through the Turks and Caicos into the southeastern Bahamas and the central Bahamas, and by the weekend taking aim somewhere from northern Cuba through the Florida Straits. It is still uncertain exactly where Irma will go. We have the European and Canadian models bringing it closer to Cuba. We have the GFS model closer to the east coast of Florida. Right now, somewhere in between, which means if you're in the Florida Keys, we already have a mandatory evacuation for tourists, and we're going to have a lot of evacuations for this hurricane. Probably the most serious hurricane to threaten South Florida since maybe Andrew, 1992. It's been 25 years, quarter of a century, living right out there in the Atlantic. You are lucky that it hasn't been more often than that. You can see we do have the hurricane warnings, obviously, for the northern islands of the Leeward Islands as well as Puerto Rico, and we now have a hurricane watch for the north coast of the Dominican Republic as well as the Turks and Caicos and the southeastern Bahamas, because remember, Hurricane Irma is going to make that west-northwest curve back in that region over the next couple of days as a catastrophic hurricane, extremely powerful. I can tell you as a meteorological nerd that you don't get much better than this. This is as strong as a hurricane can get, both as a Category 5, there is no Category 6, and the fact that the minimum for a Cat 5 is 156 to 160 miles per hour. This thing's at 185, so if there's an upper echelon of hurricanes, Irma has reached it. You can see just a perfect buzzsaw headed directly towards those northern islands. It looks like it might finally have a little bit of a northward component to its westerly track, but nevertheless, note the expanding outflow there. Very, very impressive as Irma continues towards the west. And if you're in Barbuda, Anguilla, Saba, all the northern islands, Guadeloupe, you guys are going to start to have weather head downhill. Look at that visible satellite imagery. You can see straight down to the surface of the ocean. The stadium effect, where we also have this like 3D vision of the eastern eye wall. You can see that there. Look at that moon crescent shape on the right side of the eye. That's the sun hitting the eastern eye wall of this catastrophic Category 5 hurricane. The Air Force reconnaissance aircraft have been flying out there all night, all day. Those guys recorded those extremely strong winds. But remember, it's only going to be within the eye wall that you have those Category 5 winds, but whichever islands that eye wall goes over, you could have catastrophic damage. Here's the Guadeloupe radar. You can obviously see a very well-defined band of heavy weather right around the eye of the hurricane. That's the eye wall. That's where those 185 mile per hour winds are. And you can see some of these islands right in here directly in the path of this catastrophic hurricane. Again, when you're dealing with islands, you might just miss it, but if you left or prepared and you miss it, don't be angry that you didn't get it. You'd rather be safe than sorry. You can see the hurricane continuing there. Finally, as I mentioned, looking like it's getting a little bit more north of west component to its track. Now, where exactly it goes, the computer models are in good agreement that it's going to go through the northern islands as a catastrophic hurricane, north of Puerto Rico, north of Hispaniola, just ravage the Turks, Caicos, and the southeastern Bahamas, and then eventually start to bend north as there's a weakness in the high pressure off to the north of it. However, where that turn occurs is critical. You can see some computer models have it turning towards the Carolinas, others have it going over Cuba and turning more towards the west coast or the Florida Panhandle. If you're going to slice it down the middle, you would say somewhere north of Cuba through the Florida Straits towards Marathon, Key Largo, Homestead. You guys have to be on the alert right now. If you live in Homestead, of course, well, maybe not some of the younger people, but certainly people who were there in 1992 remember a Category 5 hurricane named Andrew. By the way, there's no guarantee this will stay a Cat 5, but it is expected to remain, at least as of now, a Category 4 hurricane throughout the forecast period. And we saw what Cat 4 hurricanes can do. Obviously, Hurricane Charlie was a Category 4 in Punta Gorda back in 2004, and Hurricane Harvey was a Category 4 down in Rockport, Texas, just a couple of days ago. So these hurricanes do come, and it's very, very devastating when they hit land at those intensities. One of the reasons Irma got so strong, not only increasing water temperatures, which are only going to get warmer as it heads towards the west, but also very favorable upper-level winds. A lot of times wind shear will blow these storms apart, not with Irma. You can see the blues and the blacks on this map indicate low wind shear right over the top of Irma, very favorable, as well as under Jose, right over the top of Jose. We'll talk about Jose briefly in a second. And then as you can see on this map, just a beautiful ventilation right over the top of Hurricane Irma, which is why it's gotten so strong over the last couple of hours. There's the GFS model, which scrapes it directly right inland and up the entire east coast of Florida. That would be devastating. Now, we're not saying that's going to happen. That's just a computer model, and it still would be 5 or 6 days away. However, there's always the chance that this thing speeds up a little, and even if it doesn't, we're beginning to get closer and closer and closer to where the computer models will be in better agreement that Florida will have a significant impact. But in the short term, the islands, the Turks, Caicos, and the Bahamas are under the gun. In 1928, a Category 5 hurricane hit Puerto Rico after going through the northern islands and then hit near Lake Okeechobee as a Category 4. It was extremely deadly. We also had Hurricane Donna in 1960. Almost on this date, in 1960, September 5th, it was going through the northern islands and then it bent back west and went right into the Keys, very similar to the projected path of Hurricane Irma. So be careful with the media, social media nowadays. People think, oh, this has never happened. Trust me, this stuff has happened. It's just not every day that you see it. Now I want to touch on Jose. Jose's out there at 12.3, 39.1. Winds are 40. It's moving west-northwest at about 12, 13 miles an hour. Way up at 1,008 millibars. Compare that to Irma, which is at 926 millibars. To give you some example of the strength of this, you can see Jose is expected to be another hurricane and be a Category 2 over the weekend, moving hopefully away from the islands of the Caribbean. However, down the road where Jose goes, nobody knows. But right now we can see the computer models indicate Jose will be sticking around for a while, so we're going to watch it. There's the visible satellite imagery looking a little bit better organized this afternoon. Finally, I want to touch on an area of disturbed weather in the Western Gulf. This could be another tropical depression or storm. The next name would be Katia, and you can see it there getting better organized. Should stay in Mexico, though, hopefully not cause any more problems in Texas. Nevertheless, there is Hurricane Irma on the right side of the screen, approaching the northern Leeward Islands All preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion. You don't get much stronger than this when it comes to hurricanes. I'm Mike Naso, and I will see you guys next time with more on Catastrophic Hurricane Irma.